All right, guys, this video is an important one. I did release a 30-minute video yesterday talking about if we are given the chance to get a perfect entry for highly speculative, high-risk options. You know, not all options are created equal in terms of like their risk profile. I did that 30-minute video in the community. Okay, I just want to make sure you guys all see it right here. You can find it in the just the main feed here, or you can just go up to the classroom, click trading. I did add a bunch of videos, honestly, too, you might want to check out, but then it's just at the bottom here called MSTR Options Perfect Entry. I also put a list of the backtest levels to look out for. And if you're thinking like, well, I don't have all day to look at a screen to see if we hit these backtest levels, I would highly recommend the TradingView Alerts lecture right here. And it just talks about how to go into TradingView and set alerts so you don't have to be glued to a screen all day. Okay, I want to make sure I made that clear. Now, I made a short list for today's video. First, portfolio. In general, like, I don't want to give financial advice, okay? But like, you've seen me talk about the Bitcoin breakout. This is the linear chart. It doesn't even really tell the story, but this linear chart does tell a story too. Remember, if you saw, maybe you didn't see, but in these lectures, when I was showing you like the TradingView basics and advanced, and I was doing basic charting in front of you, I talked about how like we could draw some trend lines on the Bitcoin chart. Well, I told you I would connect the 2017 top to the 2021 highest point. And then you get an overhead resistance right here. And look, it came into play. But guess what? Look at that wick. It also wicked right through it as if it was nothing. You know, hopefully you guys can see right here, okay? I didn't expect that wick. I expected it to look more like this, okay? Like where the wick respects the overhead resistance. It didn't. This is the accurate way to draw the trend line. It went right through, okay? It should have stopped at 122,600. It ended up stopping at 123,300. So again, incredible strength. There is no guarantee that we will get a backtest, guys. But if we do get it for options, I always like guys, with options, it pays to wait, okay? It pays to wait. You might not get the opportunity, but if you do, you're going to slam dunk. And when you get that opportunity for perfect entries, you can take on like higher risk options than would make sense to if you're just chasing a move late. Okay, I talked about it for 30 minutes, so just make sure if you have time to watch this video on the perfect entry. Okay, this is the generational wealth candle entry if we're given it. Now, there's going to be other opportunities, so I'm not trying to make it sound like it's now or never either. There will be other opportunities, I believe. Okay, now, in terms of portfolio, let's not talk about options. Let's just talk about stock. MSTR stock right now, what an incredible setup. What an incredible setup. It doesn't mean it goes up in a straight line, as nothing does. Okay, nothing does go up in a straight line unless you want to go look at like yearly candles on like the S&P, in which case it might actually go up in a straight line. But I mentioned that over the weekend too, that's like it's more like a managed, you know, fake growth where there's literal, you know, teams that will step in and like kill interest rates, cut them to zero just to prop the markets up, right? And I get why, but either way, look at the MSTR chart. I mean, there's no reason in my mind to be thinking about like if you have like money sitting on the sidelines. And this is the thing, not financial advice. I'm talking about, let's not say let's say if I have money on the sidelines, like, and I'm not all in like ever, like I'm still going to have money in a savings account in the bank. I still have, you know, hedges. Like I do have permanent S&P exposure in my 401k from when I used to have a day job. I'm not touching that. That's S&P. You know, I've got some gold. I have my Bitcoin cold storage. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going crazy here, but if I have in my trading account money that's just sitting there cash, how is it not in MSTR? Like we're not having any conversations about trimming exposure until we're up here at like, okay, well, we said we're going to talk resistances as well. Like there are some resistances along the way, but I would not be selling any of them, just being honest. I might be trading the resistances along the way, but I'm not selling MSTR until we're up at least at the top of this channel, in which case, by the way, I will not be selling this either. Just like in Bitcoin. Remember how we had the green chart here in Bitcoin? The green chart that contained price action for so long on the linear chart? We literally just broke out. Okay, we'll probably maybe get a back test, which would be incredible, and then boom, gone. 200K, right? That's what I'm thinking, 200K plus. Upwards potential to 350K, no joke. I also need to do what I kind of mentioned over the weekend where maybe I do watch and consume a lot of content, guys. So like I can put a list together where I talk about various people's price targets and what models kind of support them. It's just one of those things where it's like, man, I got so much going on. So it's like, but I don't want to make an excuse. I said I would try to do it, so I'm going to try to do it. It's not going to happen overnight though. Back to the MSTR chart. Like this is such a clean, like well-defined, easy to see channel. Whoops. Okay. That I would not consider selling any shares or even consider entertaining discussions if we're not up here. You know what I mean? Testing the top of this channel again. And even there, I'm not going to personally be selling anything, but I might sell, you know, some covered calls or something like 1 week out, you know, on the off chance that, you know, it doesn't just break straight through. But as you can see here, Bitcoin did go through. So that's a good indicator of what to expect when we do get up there. By the way, we're talking casually about MSTR at like $630 right now, you know, and if we look at the log chart, yes, there's other resistances like 600, you know what I mean? I talked about one at 550. We have time. I don't think we're going straight to 550 today. You know, that's 100 points away, but we are going to talk about those resistances in the near future, right? That being said, I was just talking about like, if you have money on the sidelines, why wouldn't it be in some Bitcoin adjacent trade? Whether it's MSTR via options, whether it's MSTR underlying, I mean, at a minimum underlying, right? Then you have like only the downside risk. And what is the downside risk? Then you have only the downside risk. To me, that's like, I mean, again, it's like, I don't want to talk too crazy and it's not financial advice, but like, it's a no brainer for me, you know? Or even if you do have the ability to like sell some other positions, like, you know, I've seen people talking about like mid-cap stocks, and not in this group, but like mid-cap random stocks, small cap stocks. And I'm just like, man, guys, now is not the time to be gambling on like random ass stocks when you have a sure, how often, I mean, I want to say sure thing, because that's like, it's like almost like a jinx, right? We don't like to talk like that, but it's like, you know what I mean? Look at this setup. Look at this setup. Even if you knew nothing about TA, look at this linear chart setup, you know, perfect back test gone. And the, you know, we're getting a gap up this week. The log scale chart is even better, you could argue, of a setup. And then what's crazy about this trade specifically is it's not just speculating on one company. You can then look at the Bitcoin chart and be like, oh my God, it gets better. Here's the Bitcoin chart breaking out of this 7-year channel on the linear chart. And then you flip it to the log scale chart and somehow it gets even better. Are you kidding me? I feel like I'm like the sham wow guy. You know, the people on those infomercials trying to sell you something. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just saying these charts keep getting better. And we know they're correlated. What more could you ask for? So if you have, I'm not trying to say what to do, but it's like if I had money on the sidelines, or I could sell some like dumbass like mid-cap stock that's purely speculative and just park my money in MSTR shares, I would do that. That's what I would do personally. And then I would also potentially buy options. Again, I would like to see a little bit of a pullback either on the MSTR or the Bitcoin chart. That's why I said watch the perfect entry video. It's 30 minutes. It's a long one. And you'll hear me say the same thing probably 5 or 6 times, but it's because I also don't want anybody like mad at me if the back test doesn't manifest. So I'm trying to put it in perspective. But here is basically levels I would watch for, and then you can even set alerts in TradingView so you get automatically alerted, okay? So MSTR versus, when I say MSTR, it's really like Bitcoin proxy, right? When I say MSTR, it's just a placeholder for a Bitcoin proxy, right? Because you also know like the IBIT ETF also exists. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to be clear there as well. That also works. This works. Okay. Stocks versus options. I think I've also kind of talked about that. So just check out this video. It does a good job breaking that down. Resistances, I said we're going to talk about in a future video. The last thing I want to leave you with in this video, I guess, is basically that point I was trying to make is if you're waiting to buy shares, like my personal, if I was giving financial advice, theoretically, like obviously I'm not giving financial advice, but theoretically, if I was a financial advisor, you know what I mean? I would say you don't want to miss this move. You don't want to miss this move because you wanted a back test so that you could enter, like, let's just do the math real quick. Okay. Ready? So let's use Bitcoin as our guide for how far back we think this thing could fall. So if Bitcoin drops back down to 117.1 from 121.7, 117.1 divided by 121.7. 121.7. Typo. Okay. You would potentially get, like, let's just say this directly translates into an MSTR backtest. Your entry would be 3.8% better, right? So you would get in 3.8% better. Now, if that doesn't manifest and you don't get your position, now we're talking about shares right now, not options, okay? Shares, which hopefully you guys would have already had your shares position built, but it's okay if you didn't. Like, waiting for the breakout is okay. I said it's okay to wait for the breakout and wait for all the confirmation. Like in our community, we do have, for a reason, this entire breakout tracker, which is up to date, by the way. Look at this. Everything is checked off except MSTR new all-time high. Everything else is checked off, guys. So now's the time to have your, if you're buying the underlying, which I would recommend, I mean, again, not financial advice. Theoretically, I would recommend it. That's should be your core position because then you don't have to lose sleep at night. You know, with options, it's highly volatile. You're talking about 3.8% better entry that may or may not manifest. It's a range of probabilities. Look at the upside. This thing could just start running and get to 100. By the way, resistances. I just wanted to show one real quick resistance. So let me go to the Bitcoin. Like realistically, like a resistance for Bitcoin on this chart would be like this is how silly it gets to be talking about resistances. It's going to be like up here. You know what I mean? Like we already wicked through. Okay, you could say there's a resistance at 122.7, but we've already wicked through it. So I don't think that's going to hold very long. You know, there should have been a lot of selling pressure right there, and there wasn't. The next resistance is going to be up here at like 134,000, between 134 135. You know what I mean? And these aren't even really like the type of significant resistances I like to bank on. You know what I mean? Like, will we see a quick pullback if you're in options and it happens during the market hours and you want to sell them? Yeah, you know what I mean? That would be a good opportunity. But I mean, just keep it simple. Keep it simple. Don't find ways to not make money or to miss out on easy money just by holding the underlying right now. It's not time for that. You know what I mean? If the Bitcoin log scale chart didn't show you that it's not time for that, then I don't know what picture will. This is log scale. This move may not look significant, but right there, we're at 162,000. You know, I think we consolidate and then potentially continue higher up to like 210, 220. Like, it's not time to be speculating and potentially missing out on these profits. Like, these opportunities, they're not going to come. Like, but, you know, I mean, look at this. We spent 5 years on this level. Guys, we're going to spend most likely 10 plus years on this level. 10 plus. So we're talking about it a decade later. You know, in a decade later, we can reconvene this group, get the group back together, the gang, and talk about all of this all over again. When I say 10 years, that's not an exact science. I'm just saying, like, the time that we spend on each level gets longer and longer and longer, and the moves get more and more significant. That's why I made a video over the weekend on YouTube saying this move is the most misunderstood move. You know what I mean? For a lot of reasons. Like, things change, things evolve. Don't get caught off guard, guys. Have your core underlying position. Do not, I mean, I don't want to say what to do, right? But like, we're talking shares here. You know, it's like the cleanest setup you could ever ask for in a stock like MSTR, or just buying the IBIT ETF, whatever. You know what I mean? Options, of course, gets a little bit more complicated. And I have the 30-minute video here in the classroom. So I'm just going to end on that. Classroom, click trading, and then down here, options, perfect entry. If you made it to the end of this video and you're not a member, I want to invite you to check out my MSTR Generational Wealth Group. It is linked below. I'm going to increase the price on Tuesday, July 15th. So this is your chance to join, take advantage of all the resources, attend the weekly live streams, participate in discussion about Bitcoin MSTR and all of those related things, and try to really, truly maximize your return on this generational opportunity. And you can look forward to more video updates like the one that you just watched, and it's linked below.